So we're using the same number for presentation?
What's that, Andre?
So we're going to use the same dial-in number for the whole presentation, or is there a different one? The WebEx?
Nope. No,
same one?
This is it.
Okay.
So good morning, everyone. This is Carrie Hogan. It's just 11 o'clock. I'm going to give it another minute before we get started. I know your time is very valuable, and we got a lot to cover, so I won't take up too much here to delay this too long. Just we had over 100 people register, and I just want to give it another minute for them to join, and then we'll get going. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Carrie Hogan with NYSERDA's Clean Heating and Cooling team. I'm here to provide you an overview of NYSERDA's Green Jobs, Green New York financing program as it relates specifically for the new New York State Clean Heat program and the participating contractors. And hopefully we'll cover some questions and answer the questions that you've had and alleviate some confusion. So if we could go to the next slide, please. My name is Carrie Hogan with NYSERDA's Clean Heating and Cooling team. And today we're going to hopefully provide, through a cross-section with my colleagues at NYSERDA and EFS, provide you with a thorough overview and answer some questions that you may have that may come up during that. So what we're going to ask is that everyone is muted on this call and will remain muted. We ask if you have any questions, if you could just put those in your chat function, the Q&A. We can respond to them that way as we go along, if we have time, and then we've devoted some time at the end to those as well. We will be sharing a copy of the slide deck and a recording, so that will be forthcoming sometime after the presentation. Just want to give you an idea who's going to be speaking today. So we've got Heather Clark and Kevin Hunt from NYSERDA's Financial Solutions team. We've got Ann Tadine and Stephanie Knackers from Energy Finance Solutions, and also my colleague on the Clean Heating and Cooling team, Andre Davis. Apologize for that, Andre. I do know it's Davis, but I will correct that on the final one. So I think without any further ado, we'll begin. So we'll go to the next slide and start with Heather, I believe.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for participating. So I'd like to give you a little background on the Green Jobs, Green New York financing. Legislation creating Green Jobs, Green New York was first passed in 2009. And we issued our first loan in December of 2010. So we're up to almost 10 years of issuing loans. That legislation was amended in 2011 to allow for on-bill recovery loans, which I'll cover a little bit more in detail in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So the loan terms and conditions for Green Jobs, Green New York, these are unsecured loans. They are available for 1 to 4 residential units. And currently, the interest rates for on-bill recovery loans are $3.49 or $6.99, and for smart energy loans are $3.99 or $7.49, with a 0.5% discount applied if using the automatic clearinghouse payment method. The higher amount there, interest rate of $7.49, is if the customer pays by check. The minimum loan amount is $1,500. We can go up to $13,000 and even go up to $25,000 in the loan amount if the simple payback is less than 15 years. And the simple payback is calculated by dividing the loan amount by the first year of estimated energy cost savings. We have loan terms of 5, 10, or 15 years, and the term may not exceed the expected useful life of improvements. Next slide, please. We have two loan products. The first is a smart energy loan, in which the borrower is billed on a monthly payment or basis, and either sends in a check or, as I said before, makes a payment through the automatic bank withdrawal. The borrower must own, rent, or manage the residential building to qualify. They have to sign a note with our loan originator, EFS. For this loan, if the home is sold or transferred, the borrower is responsible for paying off the balance of the loan. It cannot be assigned. And we have two cost-effective requirements. If it is a pre-qualified measure, which air source and ground source are, the pre-qualified eligible measures have to be at least 85% of the loan. So for air source and ground source, that's pretty much covered. It's inherent due to the nature of the projects. The loans of $13,000 or more must meet the 15-year simple payback calculation. And a loan is subject to late payment fees of 5% or $5 and collection fees. Collection fees are up to 22% of the amount due if not received within 90 days of the due date as authorized by New York State law. And these payments that are being made are made directly to Concord, which is NYSERDA's loan servicer. Next slide, please. The second loan product that we offer is an on-bill recovery loan, or an OBR. In this, for this loan product, the borrower repays the loan through a charge on his or her gas or utility bill. In this case, the borrower must own the home and be named on the utility account. Again, they have to sign a note with EFS, and then they also have to sign an OBR program declaration. These declarations are then notarized and are filed or recorded with the county where the property is located. It's not a lien, but it's used to provide notice to any subsequent purchaser of the property that there is a loan on the property. If the home is sold or transferred, the borrower is responsible for providing notice to the purchaser of the property, and then the remaining payments can be transferred to that new utility account holder. For the cost-effectiveness requirements, the monthly payment may not exceed 1/12 of the estimated average annual savings cost from the improvements over the term of the loan. So in other words, the savings must equal or be greater than the monthly payment. And again, loans over $13,000 must meet the 15-year simple payback calculation. Non-payment of the loan can result in the termination of utility service, and the loan can be subject to late payment fees. Next slide, please. So the Green Jobs Green New York loan criteria, we have two tiers of loans. Really, the customers they don't see any difference in the tier 1 versus tier 2 loans. We label or we classify tier 2 loans that those are able to reach lower credit-worthy borrowers. The difference in how we present or we look at these is whether or not we can use those loans to pledge the cash flows for when we issue bonds. We issue bonds, municipal bonds, in order to refund or to fund back up the Green Jobs Green New York Loan Fund in order to be able to issue more loans. Next slide, please. So a little information. As of May 31st, we've actually issued over 27,000 residential loans, totaling about almost $320 million in principal we've issued. And we have an outstanding balance of about $196 million. Out of the 27,000 residential loans, we've seen over 18,000 in energy efficiency projects, 8,700 in solar projects, and approximately 200 in other renewable technologies, including air source and ground source heat pumps. We publish our data monthly on the Open New York and at NYSERDA's website. All the information about the Green Jobs Green New York loan portfolio, including the number and amount of loans. You can look up by county, how many Tier 1 versus Tier 2, what kind of technologies the loans were issued for, and the number and amounts of each loan. Next slide, please. In January of 2020, January 1st, 2020, we developed a new geographic-based eligibility for the lower interest rate loans. Up until that point, anybody that wanted to qualify for a lower interest rate loan needed to provide EFS, their household documented income, or the documentation for household income, providing that the income was less than or equal to 120%, they would get that lower interest rate loan. We heard a lot of feedback from contractors that this was onerous and sometimes difficult to obtain that documentation. There was in customer feedback as well. We wanted to make things easier for everyone, so we created this geographic-based eligibility. We created this interactive tool on NYSERDA's website, which identifies areas in New York State where the area or the block using housing or HUD median income block data identifies those areas or census block areas where the area median income is less than or equal to 120% of 50% or more of that household population in that block. So contractors and customers can go to this interactive tool, enter their address, and it automatically will show if that household is in one of those block areas. If it is, they automatically qualify for that lower interest rate loan, and they do not have to provide household documentation for income. They may have to provide income for debt-to-income calculations, but it's not the entire household documentation. Now, for customers that may be outside of those designated areas, we still allow them to apply the traditional way of providing that income documentation. Next slide, please. This map shows in the blue areas all of those areas that qualify for those lower interest rate loans, where the median income equals or is less than or equal to 120%. Approximately 74% of all New York State households, or about 5.4 million households, automatically qualify for the lower interest rate loan. Next slide, please. So in January, we also started a new program for contractor advance payments. This allows contractors whose customers qualify for that lower interest rate loan to get a 50% of the loan amount up front before the project starts, as long as the loan documents are signed and returned. It's limited to contractors who are in good standing. The contractor will receive 50% of the advance when the loan documents are signed, and then the remaining 50% is dispersed at construction completion. Now, the project must be completed within 180 days of advance, or a written request for an extension must be received by NYSERDA prior to that 180 days. If the project is not complete within 180 days, the funds must be returned to NYSERDA. In order to participate in this advance payment program, the contractor must again be in good standing, which is not on probation or suspended from a program within the last 18 months. They'll need to sign a finance participation agreement. To the extent that the project is not complete or funds are not returned within the 180 days, we can include sanctions or ramifications, including an interest rate charge. Future incentives for any program at NYSERDA can be withheld, and we can possibly suspend you from NYSERDA programs. Now, the nice thing about this is that NYSERDA advances the funds, meaning that the customer is not accruing any interest or having to make any payments on that loan until that the second 50% or final 50% is released to the contractor. Next slide, please. So based on some contractor feedback, we decided to implement some pro forma changes. The first thing is that we will allow federal and state tax credits, as applicable, to be removed from the calculation amount. The maximum amount of the federal and state tax credits will be permitted to be included in the payback or SIR calculation as a reduction of the customer's investment. We also include industry standard practice replacement costs, again as applicable. So for projects replacing equipment or systems at failure or at the end of the useful life, or early replacement of such equipment or systems, the current cost of replacing the system with a like system following industry standard practice is again permitted to be included in the payback or SIR calculation as a reduction to the consumer's investment. And we're also going to simplify the calculations for payback and SIR. So the pro forma calculations are going to have removed the utility rate escalations and excluded the loan interest cost from the consumer's investment so that the payback calculations are calculated using current dollars. Next slide, please. I turn this over now to Kevin Hunt.
Listening to us. Good morning, all. Next slide, please. Okay. I manage the small commercial program, and just a little bit of background. This also came out of the Green Jobs, Green New York legislation from 2009 and all the various amendments throughout the years. The program itself is not nearly as widely used as the residential program is. But I will go through the program, gearing it towards air source and ground source heat pumps. So who is eligible? Quite a few businesses, the majority of businesses throughout the state are actually eligible. As long as you have 100 and fewer employees, you would be eligible for financing. And if you're a not-for-profit, and that's of any size, you are eligible for financing. The slide says we're real estate agnostic. We will, finance warehouse improvements, commercial improvements, office building improvements, retail strips, anything like that, other than multifamily buildings. Multifamily projects have their own program. Next slide, please. Okay. Various technologies, pretty much all the technologies that do provide incentives for are eligible for financing, along with pretty much all of NYSERDA's residential commercial measures, such as pretty much all energy efficiency measures and air source heat pumps and all the renewable energy technologies, including ground source heat pumps. Next slide, please. Just like on the residential side, we have two loan products. One is the participation loan, and the other is the on-bill recovery loan. Both programs have the same interest rate. We are lending at the Wall Street Journal prime rate of interest plus 2%. That gets fixed at closing. Today, the prime rate of interest is 3.25. So the borrower would receive a fixed rate of 5.25%. The maximum term is up to 10 years. Maximum amount of financing is $50,000, and we don't require any participation agreement with contractors. Next slide, please. And the participation loan side, the payback here has to be 50 years or less. I guess the benefit of using the participation loan is that it allows for deeper energy retrofits, because we will fund 50% of the project cost and for energy efficiency up to $50,000. So if you've got a project that costs $75,000, NYSERDA would be in for 50% or $35,000. The participating lender would be in for $35,000 at whatever rate they charge. The participation loan can also be used in conjunction with larger projects. And what I mean by that is NYSERDA's portion is limited to $50,000, but the bank can lend, their maximum can exceed $100,000, which would be, obviously twice the cost of the energy efficiency. So if there's a new construction project or a deep retrofit, then this product could be available. We have 16 participating lenders that offer this product. They charge their own customary rate, and each lender has its own underwriting guidelines. We also are looking for additional lenders to participate in the program. So if you know of any, feel free to pass them our way. Next slide, please. The on-bill recovery loan works exactly like the residential loan, with a couple of, caveats. EFS does not underwrite our loans on the commercial side. That's all done by Barrett Capital Corporation. And Barrett Capital uses NYSERDA's underwriting guideline. The payback here has to be 10 years, maximum 10 years, unlike the participation loan, which was a maximum 15 years. Now, if a project has a payback of 10 years or less, then it's eligible for both programs. That would be at the choice of the borrower. One of the major differences between the commercial and residential program is that on the residential side, the loan does not convert, I should say NYSERDA does not fund the on-bill recovery loan until the project is completed. That means that the borrower must take out either a bridge loan from the lender or self-fund. All other aspects are identical. The meter must be in the borrower's name. A declaration is signed and gets filed in the county. Transferable as long as certain conditions are met, and the savings has to be greater than the loan payments. Next slide, please. So, tailoring more now towards air source and ground source heat pumps. Like Heather said, air source heat pumps, or both products are pre-qualified. So as long as they're 300,000 BTUs per hour or less, then the systems are on the NEEP list. You don't need to approve them. You would approve the incentive only. The contractor would send to me directly a copy of the small commercial pro forma, the heat load calculation, which is the audit, and the audit is a requirement of the legislation and the contract for the work between the borrower and the contractor. Next slide, please. Okay, if the unit is, I guess, 300,000 BTUs or larger, same documentation is required to NYSERDA. However, we cannot approve the project unless the utility approves it. I'm really not sure how applicable this is going to be, because I think it's probably bigger than what most small businesses would really require. However, that is a requirement. You to approve it for us to continue. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the process is quite a bit different than on the residential side. The contractor submits to me the documentation, provided the all conditions are met. The borrower, the customer, will receive an eligibility letter. All that states is that the project is eligible for financing. It does not guarantee that they will receive it. Once they receive that letter, then the borrower, the applicant, can go to either Barrett Capital for an OBR loan or to one of the participating lenders for a participation loan. And from there, they will follow, submit documentation as required of the lender. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's our contact information. Please do not hesitate to contact either Heather or myself if you have any questions. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to our colleagues at EFS. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you go to the next slide, please? All right, my name is Ann Deteen. I am the Resource and Services Manager for Energy Finance Solutions, also known as EFS. I also have with me today colleague Stephanie Knackers, who's a program coordinator. Our email addresses are listed on the slide. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. Next slide, please. All right, so as Heather talked about earlier, we are the financing portion contracted by NYSERDA, and we take care of checking in and approving financing for residential loans. So I know some of you on the call are already a contractor, but for those who are not, you can become a contractor with us by just visiting our website and filling out some forms. I've got our website there. And for more details on qualifications, there's also a website that they check out there. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we appreciate all you're doing, and I am going to turn it over to Stephanie to go over some more details. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Ann. So I'm going to go over using the EFS portal. So I know some of you are familiar with that already, but just in case you're not, I just want to go over a couple points just to make sure we have all the big stuff noted for you. So once you're qualified as a contractor, you'll have access to our portal. On the portal, you can track the status of your loan. You can upload documents directly to the file for that customer. So you don't have to, fight with the fax machine or things like that. You can communicate directly with your loan officer and EFS staff. You're able to print out loan documents and pre-approval letters for your customers. So if they don't have a printer, you still have access to those. You're also able to receive real-time updates and notifications by email. So if something does change, you get that notification right away. Next slide, please. This is going to be what you see when you first log into the contractor portal. This is your pipeline. So on the far left, you'll have your file number. If they started the process but haven't finished, it'll say pre-submit, like the second line there. So you know they haven't submitted it yet. You'll have your product code, your customer's last name, first name, address, and who your loan officer is as well. Next slide. So when you go into one of your customers' files, you'll see their name on the left with a couple different tasks that you can toggle between. The first one that you land on is application summary. Each of these light blue bars you can click on and they open up in an accordion style so you can see more information. So the ones that are open right now are the borrower information, the loan information, and the important dates. And that just allows you to keep up to date with the information you need to know when you need to know it. Next slide, please. And this is our comment feature. So when you come into comments, what you can do is type in a question or, you know, maybe you uploaded something and you just want to note it here. And when you hit add comment, that green button, an email goes directly to your loan officer. The loan officer then will get an email notification letting them know that you put in a comment, and they can go ahead and either give you a call, they'll comment back, whatever needs to be done, so that way they can get your questions answered. You're not able to put in comments for your customers this way, but it does give you a really fast way to get in touch with that loan officer so they know exactly what you need. Next slide, please. And this is our conditions page. For customers, we'll know it as our items needed page, but basically it gives you a breakdown of what we still need. The first grouping is conditions to be satisfied by the customer. So you can see always saying no. That just lets you know what the customer still hasn't either sent to us or has been satisfied yet. And then we have conditions to be satisfied by the contractor, and that just gives you an idea of what we still need from you. And then there's a general documentation maybe uploaded here box. So if you have something you're not sure where it goes, you can always upload anything there and we can take care of it for you. And next slide, please. So applying for a loan, so this would be for your customers. They are allowed to apply online, which is highly recommended, so they can get status updates right away sent to their email, or they can do a paper application as not everyone's comfortable applying online. A hard credit pull will be done, so we just want to make sure people are aware of that before they submit an application for a loan. We may ask for different documents from the customer. So sometimes we might be asking for income documentation, ACH information. It just depends on what they're specifically applying for. We'll let them know to check the portal for outstanding items, for pre-approval letters, and other information. Once everything needed is all checked in and received and accepted, the loan status will move from conditionally pre-approved to final pre-approval. And that's when we tell the customers that we are just waiting for the approval to come in to draw up their loan documents. Next slide, please. So for submitting the pro forma, you're going to want to send that to us once the file's in final pre-approval status. So because it's the Excel workbook, we ask that you send those to us by email. We have our email listed there, the work scope at energyfinancesolutions.com. So you'll send that along with the contract and we'll take care of it from there. The turnaround time is 1 to 2 days, just depending. We can check the portal for updates. If there's anything else that we need from you or something doesn't look right, we'll reach out right away, usually by phone or by commenting through the portal. And also, we'll send out loan documents right away if everything is looking fine. So if you don't have any feedback from us, everything should be good. If you have any specific pro forma questions, you just want to reach out to NYSERDA for those. Next slide, please. So closing the loan, once our loan documents are received, you're going to see that loan status change to loan docs accepted. And now and you may now complete the project. You'll also get a notification email letting you know that the loan documents have been accepted. When the project is completed, you can upload the completion documents signed by the contractor and the customer for us to review for funding. So you can do that right through the portal, right in those conditions. Next slide, please.
Okay, so that's me. Thank you very much, Heather, Kevin, Ann, and Stephanie, for walking through that process. I just want to kind of cover, before we go into demonstrations of the new and improved pro formas for air source and ground source, kind of go over a couple of things and kind of confirm, I think, some questions that have come in as far as, you know, if you have to be a NYSERDA contractor to participate in the financing program. So this webinar is focused on the New York State Clean Heat program and the participating contractors. So yes, in order to provide financing for the New York State Clean Heat projects, you would have to be a participating installer in the New York State Clean Heat program. So I would ask that you kind of like review the resources here. As I said, we'll be sharing the deck here with the link to the New York State Clean Heat landing page. There's also what's required to become a loan offering contractor. First step, if you have not already, as Ann and Stephanie have shared, you need to become a contractor, a participating contractor with EFS. Once accepted and they're there, then you can then you have the ability to continue to provide that resource to your customers. Next up, just for transitions, heat pump installers would need to fill out those are transition from NYSERDA's heat pump programs. You would need to fill out a corresponding participation agreement for the utility that you intend on submitting applications from, as well as new contractors would need to submit a contractor application and utility participation agreement. NYSERDA will also, which is new to what we've initially been telling you, NYSERDA will now require a New York State Clean Heat participation agreement, and this will cover, and this will be updated on the New York State Clean Heat resource page soon. Participation agreement, so you are able to continue to offer the financing. It has some terms and conditions in there that must be met, since NYSERDA is still maintaining the financing role. And the utilities do not have an obligation to that. We need to protect NYSERDA and New York State. So this participation agreement will kind of cover some of those terms and conditions in order to continue for the financing. Again, just confirming that you need to become an EFS participating contractor first. And then once you're accepted, you're able to start offering the financing. Next slide, please. So I just want to clarify, a lot of participants on this webinar participated in the NYSERDA's air source and ground source heat pump programs, and we're used to a certain process. So with the new transition to the New York State Clean Heat program, there is a change of the way that the financing and the incentive applications are handled. Contrary to the previous Green Jobs, GJGNY financing, NYSERDA will not does not need to see the pro formas or any applications related to the financing. This relationship is directly with EFS. Nor NYSERDA nor the electric utility on which you're submitting an incentive application for review the performance. These go directly to EFS, as is stated in the implementation manual, which I provided a link on the previous page. So I just want to caveat that NYSERDA nor the utilities see and approve the financing. The pro formas, these are after your customer receives pre-approval. The following steps are for you to provide the pro forma and either the contract or the invoicing statement to EFS directly for review and approval. NYSERDA will not, nor the utilities are expected to review and receive the pro formas. Now, when you are ready to fill out a pro forma, I ask that you use the NYSERDA resources page, Contractor, for the link to the most up-to-date pro forma or the New York State Clean Heat Program landing page. Don't rely on saving the versions. These are tweaked. We do send out notifications when they are modified. With the announcement of tomorrow's that's coming, I mean, there are tweaks, but please don't save and assume that that's the most recent version. Always go to these resource pages to get the most up-to-date link is where they will be located. And as they said, the versions of the updated air source heat pump performance, which Heather highlighted, some of the changes that are being addressed will go live tomorrow. And these are significantly different than what you're used to seeing, and hopefully for the better, and provide for better opportunities for you to provide financing to your customers to meeting the loan eligibility criteria. So just another note too, so you will notice on there that PSEG is an option on these pro formas for contractors to use. This is only that PSEG Long Island has is the ability to use the Green Jobs New York financing for heat pump projects in their territory. This does not mean that the contractors can access the New York State Clean Heat incentives. I just want to make sure to caveat that, if you see that, you may see that on there, that they are an option as a utility, but they are not able to access the New York State Clean Heat incentives. They have their own incentives in a separate process, somewhat to follow as far as the incentive levels. So, okay, next slide, please, John. And get to the demonstrations. So I think John, if you would just kindly share control so I can do my demonstration. Thank you very much. So what you will see here is the new and improved air source heat pump pro forma. When you open it up, the first tab you will see are the instructions tabs, and telling you that to complete all the yellow cells under normally, but this new and improved pro forma includes the updated New York State Clean Heat incentive levels based on the utility you choose. It also includes the additional avoided replacement costs for air source related to air source heat pumps, which will improve the payback available, the criteria to meet. So hopefully that's a better, increases your chance of providing the financing. So next up is going to be, when you log on to the air source heat pump calculator tab, you're going to see some revised heating, or revised for those that have used it previously. We'll see some revised fields to incorporate information from. And this is also, these pro formas are adjusting to the newly approved technical resource manual savings adjustments, which all of the utilities will be using to report on their savings. So for this instance, I do want to show you that there is new fields here where you'll notice where based on your option of the scenarios that you're installing, with ductless full load, and based on the information that you put in here, I wanted to show you for this one, this sample installation has 3 outdoor units, and what this will do for each of these units, you will, in the sample, plugging in the information that you're going to get from the NEAP certificate, from the NEAP database, and which will average these 3 units, which will be inputted here, and that total here, the total heating capacity at 95 degrees, is what your incentive will be based on. The total incentive will be based on that. But in this situation, this was an installation that occurred in Dutchess County. The utility is Central Hudson and Gas. It's replacing a boiler, a propane boiler with a room AC, and it produces based on that those inputs. Based on that, it's producing annual savings of $1,785. So when you then turn to the loan calculator tab, you're going to notice the total project cost minus the incentive, the utility incentive, the contractor incentive, and then eventually the loan amount. Now, new to this, as we've discussed, is the avoided replacement cost. Now, this is going to increase the chances of adding this and figuring into your average simple payback. So for this instance, the customer is financing based on this $14,940. Based on the savings of this and the rate of 3.49, the customer's simple payback is 3.9 years. So based on that, the savings in the calculation, this would eligible be for a project considering it's over 13,000. They've met the simple payback of being less than 15 years. So this project would qualify for the smart energy loan. It would not qualify for the on-bill for the 5-year based on the savings of the 12, the savings divided by 12 cannot be more than the payment, the loan payment. I'm going to show you, so that's one example of one where the loan is over 13,000 and they've met the simple payback of 3.9 years, and we've used this new field of the avoided cost. Share with you one more example. This is one where it's one unit. It's a Westchester installation with a Con Ed utility replacing fuel oil. The savings here, based on the building heating load and the anticipated single unit size of the single unit, produces an annual savings of $508. So when we go to the loan calculator tab, you will notice that the simple payback is 14.9 years. With this installation, the contractor, the loan is over 13,000, but without this customer's contribution of $1,000, if I take this, and zero this out, it does not meet. This one does not meet the loan amount being over 13 years and a payback of 16.9 years. So this is where, in order to meet that 15 years, you need to be conscious. It's either if you want to provide your $1,000 incentive in this case to lower the customer's loan amount, thus improving their utility or their simple payback. This is something you need to be conscious of. So I think, as I said, these will be released tomorrow. You'll need to, I know, getting hands on those and look at and review them, and you'll have questions for this afterwards. And we have provided email addresses in there with questions regarding the pro forma. Please feel free to reach out to us that way. And then I think I'm good. And so John, if you'll pass control to Andre, please.
All righty, thank you very much. So what I will do is walk through the ground source pro forma. As you'll see, it is very similar to what Carrie walked through with the air source, but there are some caveats that are that's good to note. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here. The first thing, as Carrie mentioned, is we have our instructions tab here, which tells you the inputs that one needs to make as well as letting you know that what is in yellow are the required inputs, and we'll go over it, and what is in orange are overrides for certain assumptions that we have embedded in the pro forma. There's also, when you complete the loan calculator, and we'll walk through that, there's also places to put the federal and state tax credits that will be used as part of the calculations, as well as what Carrie mentioned, the avoided replacement cost and the customer contributions. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of things that have to be input here. Much of it can be found on either your manual J, such as here, your manual J building heating load, or on your ACCA data sheet. And you can get these values here, dealing with the COPs and the EERs. What's interesting about the ground source, and it's a big difference than what you have on the, of course, air source, is you can specify whether it's open loop or closed loop here. You can also specify whether it's variable capacity, dual capacity, or fixed. And depending upon if you choose fixed, you have different data input fields versus if it's variable or dual capacity. And the example I've used here, I've chosen variable capacity and input the values from the AHRI certificate. Total project cost here. Also, the pumping control is also a data field that of course you don't have for air source, specifying whether it's constant flow, stage flow, or variable flow. And depending upon what you put, it changes the calculation algorithm. And also required input is the pumping power. Also coming from our manual J here, you need to know what your building cooling load is. We specify the vintage of our building, which can be old, average, or new. The incumbent fuel type. In this case, I've chosen a fuel oil for a furnace, but as you can see, you have a lot of different options there. The age of the heating equipment, you have 3 options: less than 10 years, 11 years and greater, and then you have something called the TRM, or Technical Resource Manual Code Minimum. For our air conditioning system, you can specify whether it's before 2006 or after 2006, and also whether the most efficient at the 14.5 SEER. You can also specify whether it's room air conditioning, which means the window unit. Another big difference between this and the air source is that because New York Clean Heat Program offers incentives for domestic hot water, one can specify here if they are installing a de-superheater or a dedicated water-to-water heat pump to generate the domestic hot water. You can specify whether that is a small tank or whether it's a large tank. And depending upon these parameters, or none, depending upon those parameters, a different value for calculation of the incentive is done. So you would need to input the number of people in the home and then also the number of units, and the savings for that are specified here. As Carrie went through, what you'll get here is down in this area, it will generate the savings. So it'll tell you what your base case parameters are or calculations are, those calculations for the ground source on this row, and then the delta or the savings. And in this case, what we see is that there's a displaced annual space heating fuel in gallons at 793, $1,027 for fuel savings, space heating savings. And it does the same calculation for air conditioning and for domestic hot water. And here's your total cost savings here for $1,124 for the year. As you can see, well, let's go over to the loan calculator and I'll come back and walk through what these values here are. On the loan calculator, Carrie walked through many of the inputs that one needs to specify, and I'll just go back over those so you can see what we did here. But as in the old pro forma, you have to specify whether you're paying whether the $150 processing fee is being financed as well. As you can see, this is pulling from the prior spreadsheet or the prior tab. The total project cost, what the incentive is, the amount that's going to the customer versus the amount that the contractor is retaining, whether the contractor is contributing another smaller amount to the customer to help reduce the value or reduce the cost of the project. In here, I put a customer contribution of $3,250 so that I could get the loan amount to its maximum of $25,000. If I didn't put that in, then the customer wouldn't qualify for a loan because it would be greater than the minimum, less the amount of the federal tax credit. And the way that this is calculated, and you have to manually put this in, it is the total project cost times 26%, which for ground source is the percentage for this year. Less avoided replacement cost, which I put in is $10,000. One has a choice of what you put in for that. And what you see is that the customer's net cost is $5,900. And as Carrie said, what I chose here was the 3.49% for OBR and the other loan. And I'll flip back to here before going through actually what the loan parameters spit out. So our total space conditioning incentive was $7,200. The domestic hot water incentive for this particular utility is $100 for the superheater. So your total incentive was $7,300, but the contractor retains $500 of it, so the customer sees a net incentive of $6,800. This is the sum of the customer's rebate plus the contractor contribution plus the customer's contribution, the replacement cost, and the tax incentives. So those are all the values that I showed you on the loan calculator, and they came up here to be $22,450. So the customer's post-incentive cost is $5,500 with a net payback of 5.2 years. The simple payback before all those incentives and replacement costs are included was all the way up to 31.1 years. So you can see that it makes a huge difference in the payback calculation. And finally, if we scroll through to see the final results of what this person or this project qualifies for, as you can see, they didn't qualify for the on-bill recovery because of the size of the project. But what they did qualify for here was the smart energy loan, auto pay, and the payment by check, whether it's 5-year, 10-year, or 15 years. In order to qualify for the on-bill recovery, the customer would have had to make a larger contribution of their own in order to get this line to be true. And as Carrie went through here, you can see what the monthly payment would be, the total principal and interest, and the total accrued interest. And the monthly payments are here. Loan payment amount, the dollar savings, and then what the net is.
Right. Andre, I might have to cut you off there.
Yes.
So thank you. So thank you very much. And John, you can just bring up the final slide. As you can see, we have got a lot of ground to cover. A lot of exciting, we think, changes made to these documents, to the pro formas that will, definitely advance the availability to obtain financing. So unfortunately, we didn't have to, to get to a lot of questions. I think we did answer them during but we will follow up. As I said, we'll follow up with the presentation and the recording. But if you have any direct questions on anything that we presented, please feel free to email us directly. But as I said, we'll follow up with the questions that we weren't able to get to. And we look forward to you doing lots of work for heat pumps. Thank you very much. And thank you all the panels, and everyone have a great day. Thank you so much.